Unshakable, control your emotions, master your life. Mindset and motivation for success. How much power do other people's opinions, words, or actions hold over your peace of mind? Do you find yourself easily knocked off balance by criticism, frustrated by difficult people, or constantly seeking external validation? Many spend their lives on an emotional roller coaster dictated by external circumstances. But what if you possess the inner armor to remain calm, confident, and unbothered, regardless of what happens around you? Discover the transformative power of knowing your true worth, mastering your perspective, and taking back control of your emotional state. It's time to become unshakable, the anchor within, knowing your true worth. Let's begin with a foundational truth, a bedrock principle upon which emotional resilience is built. You are the sole, ultimate authority on your own worth. Not your boss evaluating your performance, not your friends offering opinions, solicited or otherwise, not anonymous strangers commenting online, not even your closest family members. Only you truly reside at the core of your being, capable of assessing your intrinsic value. This might sound simple, yet fully internalizing it is revolutionary. When you anchor your sense of self-worth firmly within, independent of external validation, a fascinating dynamic unfolds. The world around you often begins to mirror the confidence you project. Carry yourself with quiet self-assurance, treating yourself with inherent respect, and others will intuitively respond in kind, recognizing you as someone worthy of consideration and esteem. Conversely, if you constantly radiate self-doubt, perpetually second-guessing your decisions, anxiously seeking reassurance, or overly worrying about how others perceive you, people inevitably pick up on that insecurity. They may consciously or unconsciously treat you with less respect, question your judgment, or feel empowered to criticize, simply because your own lack of conviction invites it. Therefore, the first step towards becoming unbothered by external negativity is cultivating a deep, unwavering belief in your own inherent value, independent of external feedback. Remember, however, that true confidence is distinct from arrogance. It's not about believing you are flawless or superior. It's about understanding that your fundamental worth isn't contingent on performance, perfection, or popularity. It's knowing that even when you fail, face rejection, or make mistakes, which are inevitable parts of the human experience, your core value remains intact. You possess the resilience to handle setbacks, learn from errors, and continue moving forward. When you cultivate this deep trust in your ability to navigate life's challenges, the fear of failure diminishes significantly. You stop dreading potential criticism or rejection because you know deep down that you will be okay regardless. This inner knowing, this self-trust, is the genesis of becoming truly unshakable. When external storms rage, your internal anchor holds firm, breaking the approval addiction, reclaiming your power. Consider the vast amount of human energy expended in the relentless, often subconscious pursuit of external approval. It dictates countless choices, large and small. People dress not purely for comfort or self-expression, but to fit in or impress. They tailor their speech, censoring authentic thoughts to avoid disapproval or gain acceptance. They pursue career paths, hobbies, even relationships, driven less by genuine desire and more by the perceived expectations or potential admiration of others. Whether they consciously recognize it or not, many individuals live their lives performing for an invisible audience. constantly monitoring reactions, perpetually worried about what others might think. The inherent danger of this approach is profound. It places the locus of control for your emotional well-being entirely outside of yourself, directly into the unpredictable hands of other people. The moment your happiness, your sense of worth, your inner peace becomes contingent on external validation, you grant others immense power over your emotional state. Their praise elicits fleeting pleasure, but their criticism wounds deeply. Their acceptance feels like a lifeline, but their indifference or rejection triggers agonizing self-doubt and insecurity. Living this way is akin to navigating a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the ever-changing winds and waves of others' opinions, moods, and biases. Your internal peace remains perpetually vulnerable, hostage to external forces you cannot ultimately control. But here lies the liberating truth, the key to reclaiming your power. What other people think of you genuinely has very little to do with your actual reality, and almost everything to do with their internal reality. People perceive the world, including you, through the complex, often distorted lens of their own unique experiences, personal insecurities, unmet needs, cultural conditioning, biases, and projections. One individual, based on their positive experiences or secure disposition, might view your actions or personality as amazing, inspiring, or admirable. Another person, filtering the exact same information through their own negativity, jealousy, or past wounds, might perceive you as average, threatening, or irritating. Which perception is objectively right? Neither. Opinions are subjective interpretations, not objective facts. They are reflections of the observer, not definitive statements about the observed. When you deeply internalize this understanding, you begin to fundamentally shift your relationship with others' opinions. You stop granting them undue weight. You cease taking them so personally. You recognize them for what they are: subjective reflections, not absolute truths about your worth or character. This deep-seated need for approval is often conditioned into us from a very young age. Educational systems, family dynamics, social structures frequently emphasize external rewards: the gold stars, the high grades, the parental praise, the peer acceptance. While positive reinforcement has its place, relying solely on external validation for our sense of self becomes a trap in adulthood. At some point, embracing emotional maturity requires consciously breaking free from this ingrained pattern. It demands the realization that living solely for the approval of others is an unwinnable, exhausting game. Why? Because human opinions are notoriously fickle, inconsistent, often contradictory, and ultimately impossible to universally satisfy. You could dedicate your life to being the kindest, most generous, most hardworking, most accommodating person imaginable, and inevitably someone somewhere will still find fault, criticize your motives, or simply dislike you for reasons entirely unrelated to you. So why invest your precious time and emotional energy pursuing an unattainable goal? Why base your core confidence on something as unreliable and shifting as the opinions of others? The moment you make the conscious decision to stop seeking external validation as your primary source of worth, a profound transformation begins. You start making choices aligned with your authentic values, desires, and goals, rather than tailoring them to impress an external audience or avoid potential disapproval. You cease overthinking every interaction, analyzing every nuance of how you might be perceived. You stop walking on eggshells, constantly censoring yourself for fear of upsetting someone or saying the wrong thing. You begin to live with greater authenticity, integrity, and freedom. And paradoxically, yet consistently, it is precisely when you stop needing others' approval that you often begin to receive their genuine respect, authentic confidence. The quiet assurance that emanates from within is inherently magnetic. People are naturally drawn to and respect those who appear secure in themselves, who operate from a place of inner knowing rather than seeking constant external affirmation. The lens of interpretation. Perspective is everything. The ability to consciously choose your perspective is perhaps the single most powerful tool you possess for navigating life's challenges and maintaining inner peace. How you interpret a situation, how you frame an event in your mind, fundamentally determines your emotional response to it. This is why two individuals can endure the exact same difficult experience, yet react in completely different ways. One might emerge feeling angry, victimized, and frustrated, while the other remains calm, centered, and perhaps even finds a lesson within the challenge. The external event was identical. The internal perspective was vastly different. One person understands how to consciously shift their lens. The other remains captive to their initial, often negative interpretation. Mastering your perspective grants you the extraordinary ability to transform potential stressors into opportunities. It allows you to reframe frustration as a chance to cultivate patience, to view obstacles not as insurmountable barriers, but as challenges designed to build strength, and to see perceived offenses not as personal attacks, but as neutral events devoid of inherent power to disturb your peace. Most people remain unaware that they possess this incredible internal power. They operate under the assumption that emotions are things that simply happen to them, triggered inevitably by external events. They believe that if someone behaves rudely, anger is the automatic and unavoidable response. If plans go awry, upset is the necessary consequence. If criticism is offered, feeling offended is the default reaction. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of emotional mechanics. While external events certainly occur, our emotional reaction is not directly caused by the event itself, but rather by the interpretation, the meaning, the story we attach to that event in our minds. And because we control the interpretation, we inherently possess the power to change our emotional response simply by consciously choosing to change the way we look at the situation. Let's apply this to a common trigger: criticism. Someone offers negative feedback about your work, your appearance, your choices. The immediate, unexamined instinct might be defensiveness, hurt feelings, anger, a desire to justify yourself or invalidate their opinion. But what happens if you deliberately pause and shift your perspective? Instead of immediately internalizing the criticism as a personal attack on your worth, what if you viewed it simply as information? Approach it analytically. Is there any validity here? Is there a kernel of truth, however poorly delivered, that could actually help me learn, improve, or grow? If so, extract the useful data, discard the emotional charge, and use it constructively. If upon reflection you determine the criticism is unfounded, inaccurate, driven by the other person's negativity or bias, then recognize it as meaningless noise. Understand that it reveals more about their internal state, their insecurities, or their perspective than it does about your actual reality. In either scenario, whether the criticism is partially helpful or entirely irrelevant, By reframing it as mere information rather than a personal assault, you strip it of its power to upset you. There's simply no need for an emotional reaction. This principle applies equally to dealing with difficult people. We all encounter individuals who seem consistently negative, rude, demanding, inconsiderate, or simply annoying. Letting their behavior dictate your mood can feel like an exhausting, ongoing battle. But what if you shifted your perspective here too? Instead of viewing them solely as sources of frustration and irritation, what if you reframed them as opportunities, albeit challenging ones, for your own personal growth? What if you saw each interaction not as an attack to be endured, but as a live training session for developing Christ-like patience? What if you use their negativity as practice for maintaining inner calm, exercising self-control, and refusing to descend to their level of emotional reactivity? Suddenly, these individuals transform from being mere obstacles or annoyances into unwitting tools, facilitating your spiritual and emotional development. When you stop seeing them as problems and start seeing them as practice, their power to genuinely bother you diminishes significantly. Furthermore, consider the power of adopting a long-term perspective. How much mental and emotional energy do we waste agonizing over things that in the grand scheme of life are utterly insignificant? A rude comment from a stranger, a minor inconvenience during the commute, a momentary embarrassment, a small mistake at work. We often allow these trivialities to consume our thoughts, hijack our emotions, and cast a negative shadow over our entire day. But pause and ask yourself honestly, will this specific incident truly matter a year from now? 5 years from now? On my deathbed? The vast majority of the time, the answer is a resounding no. When you consciously learn to zoom out to view daily annoyances through the lens of long-term significance, or lack thereof, you gain invaluable perspective. You realize that most of the things that trigger immediate upset are temporary and ultimately unimportant. Recognizing their transience frees you from granting them undue power over your present peace. Why sacrifice your inner calm today over something that holds no lasting consequence? Mastering perspective is mastering peace, reclaiming your throne, taking control of your emotions. It's a pervasive misconception, subtly reinforced by language and cultural norms, that other people or external circumstances are directly responsible for our emotions. We casually say things like, "He made me so mad," or "That traffic jam ruined my day," or "Her comment really hurt my feelings." This way of speaking implies that we are passive victims of external stimuli, that our emotional state is merely a reaction dictated by forces outside of ourselves. But let's be unequivocally clear. This is a fundamentally disempowering and inaccurate view of reality. The profound truth is that no one can force you to feel anything: anger, frustration, irritation, offense, without your implicit permission. No external event, no matter how challenging, and no other person, no matter how provocative, holds the power to dictate your internal emotional state unless you grant it to them. You and only you are ultimately sovereign upon the throne of your own emotions. Understanding and internalizing this principle is the absolute key to becoming emotionally untouchable. Think about it logically. Have you ever witnessed two people encountering the exact same situation? Perhaps receiving the same piece of criticism, facing the same inconvenience, or hearing the same potentially offensive remark, yet reacting in completely different ways. One person might shrug it off effortlessly, maintaining their composure, perhaps even finding humor in it. The other person might erupt in anger, dissolve into tears, or stew in resentment for days afterward. What accounts for this difference? The external event was identical. The difference lies entirely in the internal processing, the interpretation, and crucially, the choice made by each individual regarding their response. One person chose not to grant the event power over their peace. The other consciously or unconsciously handed over control. This demonstrates that our emotional response is not an automatic, uncontrollable reflex. It is mediated by our thoughts, beliefs, and ultimately our choices. When you feel anger rising in response to someone's words or actions, recognize that the anger isn't being injected into you externally. It arises because in that moment you decided, perhaps instantaneously and habitually, but a decision nonetheless, to interpret their behavior as offensive, threatening, or unjust, and you chose to react with anger. Some might protest, but I can't help it. When someone disrespects me, I just explode. While the reaction might feel automatic due to ingrained habits, it is not truly uncontrollable. Habits, even deeply ingrained emotional ones, can be consciously changed through awareness, intention, and practice. You can learn to pause before reacting. Imagine cultivating the habit of inserting a brief pause, even just one conscious second between an external stimulus, like a perceived insult or provocation, and your internal response. That tiny gap creates immense power. It breaks the chain of automatic, habitual reaction. It allows you to step back mentally, take a breath, and consciously decide how you want to respond. You can ask yourself, is this situation truly worth sacrificing my peace? Is reacting with anger productive? Does this person's opinion actually hold any weight? More often than not, when viewed through this moment of conscious reflection, the answer will be a clear no. That pause empowers you to choose a response aligned with your values, like patience or self-control, rather than being hijacked by raw emotion. Consider this powerful analogy. Suppose someone approaches you attempting to hand you a package filled with unwanted negativity, perhaps anger, criticism, or insults. If you refuse to accept the package, if you simply decline to take it from their hands, who does the package still belong to? It remains with them, the original sender. The same principle applies to emotional negativity. If someone tries to give you their anger, their criticism, their insults, you possess the absolute right to refuse delivery. You don't have to internalize it, accept it as your own, or react to it. You can simply let it remain their baggage, not yours. This doesn't equate to passive weakness or tolerating blatant disrespect. You can still address inappropriate behavior calmly and assertively set boundaries. But it means you refuse to allow their negativity to contaminate your inner peace. When someone attempts to offend you and you consciously choose not to be offended, who has truly lost power in that exchange? They have. Their goal, likely to provoke a reaction to get under your skin, has failed utterly because you refuse to grant them control over your emotional state. Think about the individuals you most respect for their strength of character. Are they typically the ones who react explosively to every perceived slight, constantly embroiled in arguments, easily provoked? Or are they the ones who maintain composure under pressure, who remain calm amidst chaos, who respond thoughtfully rather than reactively? True strength lies not in the volume of one's anger, but in the quiet mastery of one's inner world. in controlling emotions rather than being controlled by them. Moreover, when you consistently demonstrate that external negativity doesn't bother you, people gradually lose their perceived power over you. The coworker who thrives on getting a rise out of you will likely lose interest when they repeatedly see their provocations fall flat. The person who relies on criticism to manipulate or control will find their tactics ineffective when their words no longer shake your confidence. Why? Because their influence was always contingent upon your reaction. When you withhold the reaction they seek, their power dissolves. It's akin to dealing with a child's tantrum. As adults, we generally recognize their outburst stems from immaturity or unmet needs. So we don't take it personally or allow it to dictate our own emotional state. What if we applied a similar understanding, though perhaps with more compassion, to the negative behavior of adults? Recognizing that their negativity often springs from their own insecurity, pain, or lack of self-awareness rather than being a valid reflection of us, allows us to respond with detachment, perhaps even empathy, instead of taking offense. This shift frees us from wasting precious energy engaging in pointless battles that aren't truly ours to fight. Ultimately, life becomes exponentially simpler and more peaceful when you fully embrace the profound truth that you are the sole governor of your emotional realm. Master this internal control and you become remarkably, enviably unshakable. The unseen armor building inner confidence. True, enduring confidence acts like impenetrable armor in the face of life's challenges and the often critical opinions of others. When you possess a deep, unwavering sense of self-worth originating from within rather than depending on external sources, the words and actions of others lose their power to wound or destabilize you. Conversely, when inner confidence is lacking, when self-doubt prevails, every negative comment, every perceived slight, every minor setback can feel like a direct, painful attack, leaving you feeling constantly vulnerable, defensive, and on edge. This explains why some individuals seem perpetually offended, easily triggered, constantly perceiving disrespect, even when none is intended. Their hypersensitivity often stems not from excessive external provocation, but from a fragile internal foundation, a lack of certainty about their own value. When you genuinely know who you are at your core, understanding your strengths, acknowledging your weaknesses without letting them define you, trusting your ability to navigate life, you develop an internal resilience that external negativity simply cannot pierce. Think about the last time someone's criticism truly got under your skin, bothering you long after the interaction ended. Why did it have such an impact? Was it solely because their statement was objectively true and insightful? Or was it perhaps more honestly because their words touched upon a pre-existing insecurity, a hidden fear, a doubt about yourself that you already harbored deep down? This is a crucial insight. Insults, criticism, and negativity generally only possess the power to sting when they resonate with a wound or insecurity that already exists within us. If someone called a majestic lion weak or cowardly, the lion wouldn't react defensively or feel diminished because it possesses an innate certainty of its own strength and nature. It simply wouldn't register the comment as relevant or credible. However, if you call an insecure person weak, they might react with anger or defensiveness, not necessarily because they are weak, but because the comment pokes at their fear of being perceived as weak, exposing an area where their own self-belief is fragile. Therefore, the ultimate key to deflecting external negativity and never letting others get to you lies not in trying to control their behavior or opinions, but in diligently building your own unshakable inner confidence. When your sense of self-worth is securely anchored within, independent of outside approval or validation, you cease looking externally for confirmation of your value. You no longer need everyone to like you. You no longer require their positive opinions to feel good about yourself. You no longer feel compelled to constantly prove your worth or defend your choices. And the moment you achieve this state of inner security, this freedom from needing external validation, you become remarkably untouchable. The motivations behind most negativity directed towards others often stem from the aggressor's own insecurities. People try to tear others down simply to elevate themselves by comparison. But when you refuse to be pulled down, when you remain grounded in your self-knowledge and don't engage with their negativity, their attempts lose all power over you. Your inner stability neutralizes their external attack. It is vital, however, to distinguish genuine confidence from its counterfeit cousin, arrogance. Confidence isn't about believing you are superior to others, infallible, or entitled to special treatment. Arrogance is often a mask for deep insecurity. True confidence, conversely, is rooted in quiet self-assurance, humility, and the understanding that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. A genuinely confident person doesn't feel the need to win every argument, dominate every conversation, or constantly highlight their own accomplishments. They don't need to tear others down to feel built up. They are secure enough in their own identity and worth that they can afford to be gracious, listen openly, admit mistakes, and learn from feedback without feeling personally threatened. They possess an inner solidity that doesn't require external props. Reaching this level of self-assurance makes navigating life significantly less stressful. You naturally stop overthinking social interactions, cease taking things so personally, and refuse to allow minor comments or disagreements to escalate into major emotional disturbances. But remember, this kind of deep confidence isn't typically something one is born with. It is cultivated, built deliberately over time through conscious choices and actions. Every time you make a decision based on your own values rather than fear of disapproval, every time you stand by your convictions even when facing opposition, every time you handle a setback with resilience and learn from a mistake without crumbling into self-condemnation, every time you refuse to let someone else's negativity define your mood or your reality, you are strengthening that inner muscle of confidence. The more consistently you practice trusting yourself, honoring your own judgment, while remaining open to learning and refusing to outsource your self-worth, the stronger that inner core becomes. And as your confidence solidifies, the less power external opinions or circumstances will have to shake you. How do you actively start building this first? Make a conscious decision to stop seeking external approval as your primary source of validation. Recognize that you don't need everyone to like or agree with you to be valuable or secure. When criticism comes, practice analyzing it objectively. Is there truth here I can learn from, or is this just their negativity? Let go of the need to defend against every perceived slight. Let people have their opinions. They don't change your intrinsic reality unless you allow them to. Paradoxically, the less you seem to need approval, the more genuine respect you often garner. Embrace your authentic self. Trust your judgment while remaining teachable. and anchor your worth within. This is the pathway to becoming truly unshakable. The shields of serenity, humor, and indifference. Beyond building inner confidence, two powerful mental shields can help you navigate the inevitable negativity and provocations of life with remarkable serenity, humor, and indifference. There's a simple yet profound truth that most people overlook. If you consciously choose not to take something seriously, it loses its capacity to hurt or bother you. Think about it. The situations, comments, or behaviors that upset you the most are invariably the ones to which you assign significant weight, the ones you internalize and take personally. If someone directs an insult your way and you immediately accept it as a valid reflection of yourself, personalize the attack and allow it to wound your ego. It stings deeply. But what if instead you recognize the absurdity of the comment, perhaps found a sliver of humor in the situation, even if only internally, or simply chose not to grant it the importance required for it to register as hurtful? In that moment of reframing, the insult loses its venom, its power dissolves. Learning to wield humor, even gentle self-deprecation when appropriate, and cultivate a healthy indifference towards negativity that doesn't truly matter are incredibly effective strategies for becoming emotionally untouchable. Observe those who seem to go through life perpetually offended, easily angered, constantly scanning for reasons to feel slighted or disrespected. They often suffer disproportionately, not necessarily because the world treats them more harshly, but because they possess porous emotional boundaries. They let everything in. They absorb negativity like a dry sponge soaking up dirty water, internalizing insults, dwelling on inconveniences, replaying slights, allowing external events to dictate their internal state. They haven't learned to let things bounce off. Conversely, those who cultivate resilience often employ these shields. They recognize that negativity will always exist in a fallen world. There will always be people who criticize unfairly, act rudely, annoy intentionally, or attempt to provoke a reaction. The critical question isn't whether you will encounter negativity, but whether you will choose to internalize it, whether you will grant it permission to disturb your inner peace. Learning to laugh at situations or even at yourself sometimes that are meant to provoke or hurt you is a powerful way to disarm negativity. Humor creates emotional distance, diffuses tension, and signals that you are not taking the provocation as seriously as the aggressor might intend. When you refuse to meet anger with anger or offense with defensiveness, and instead respond with lightness or even a touch of amusement, you fundamentally alter the dynamic. Similarly, cultivating indifference towards things that genuinely don't warrant your emotional energy is crucial. If someone is intentionally trying to bring you down with petty criticism or baseless gossip, recognize their behavior likely stems from their own unhappiness, insecurity, or desire for attention. Fighting back, engaging in arguments, or trying to defend yourself often just gives them the reaction they crave. However, when you respond with calm indifference, refusing to play their game, demonstrating that their negativity doesn't affect your equilibrium, you leave them powerless. Nothing frustrates a provocateur more than realizing they cannot get under your skin. It's vital to distinguish healthy indifference from apathy or allowing genuine disrespect. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or letting people walk all over you. It's about discerning what truly matters and refusing to waste precious emotional energy on trivialities, pointless conflicts, or the negativity projected by unhappy individuals. If humor is the shield that deflects glancing blows, indifference is the armor that makes you impervious to attacks that aren't worth engaging. When you reach a state where others' negativity simply doesn't register as significant, where you no longer feel compelled to respond to every provocation or prove every point, you achieve a profound level of inner strength and freedom. Ignoring negativity isn't weakness. It's a demonstration of self-control and wisdom. It's recognizing that your peace of mind is far more valuable than winning a temporary argument or reacting to every slight. Your energy is a finite, precious resource. Invest it wisely in things that build you up, not things designed to tear you down. The next time someone attempts to push your buttons, consciously choose your response. Will you grant them the satisfaction of disturbing your peace? Or will you smile inwardly, shrug it off with humor or indifference, and walk away unshaken? The moment you consistently choose the latter, the moment you master the art of not letting trivial negativity penetrate your inner sanctuary, is the moment you become truly, enviably untouchable. The wisdom of release, choosing peace over pointless battles. There's a common misconception that equates strength with constantly fighting, always winning arguments, relentlessly proving one's point, and ensuring others acknowledge one's correctness or superiority. But consider this: true strength, genuine emotional maturity, often lies not in engaging every battle, but in possessing the wisdom and self-control to walk away when a conflict simply isn't worth sacrificing your inner peace. It's recognizing that your energy, your time, and your emotional well-being are far too valuable to be squandered on meaningless arguments, pointless debates, or futile attempts to convince someone who is resolutely closed-minded. Observe the strongest, most centered individuals you know. Are they typically the loudest voices in the room, constantly needing to assert their dominance or win every disagreement? Or are they often the ones who exhibit quiet confidence, who know when to remain silent, when to step back gracefully, and when to simply let things go without needing the last word? The compulsive need to be right, the urge to correct every perceived error, the drive to win every debate. This is one of the most common and effective traps people fall into, pulling them into endless, energy-draining conflicts. It feeds the ego, but starves the soul. Think about the countless arguments you've witnessed, perhaps even participated in, over trivial matters where neither party was willing to concede. Hours wasted, energy depleted, relationships potentially strained. And for what? Even if one person wins the argument, what has truly been gained? Often the only results are an exhausted mind, lingering resentment, and a significant expenditure of time that could have been invested far more productively. This isn't victory. It's often just ego masquerading as principle. Choosing to let go of the need to win every argument, to correct every perceived slight, or to engage every provocation is not a sign of weakness or apathy. It is a profound demonstration of valuing your inner peace more than your pride. It reflects the wisdom to understand that not every battle warrants engagement, and not every differing opinion requires correction or challenge. Some individuals, frankly, argue simply for the sake of arguing, thriving on conflict. Others are so deeply entrenched in their perspectives that no amount of logic, evidence, or reasoned debate will ever sway them. And still others are merely seeking to provoke a reaction, to gain attention, or to project their own negativity onto you. In such situations, engaging often only fuels their fire and drains your reserves. The wisest, strongest response is often strategic disengagement. Don't give them the argument they crave. Don't take the bait. When you consciously refuse to engage in negativity, you neutralize its power over you. When you stop responding to pointless provocations, the provocations tend to cease because they achieve no desired effect. People can only argue with you if you choose to argue back. They can only disrupt your peace if you grant them entry into your inner world. The moment you decide with conviction that your time and energy are too precious to be wasted on petty conflicts, everything shifts. It requires genuine maturity to remain silent when your ego screams for rebuttal. It takes considerable wisdom to walk away calmly when pride tempts you to stay and fight for the last word. But the reward for exercising this restraint is immense. The priceless freedom to navigate life relatively unbothered, emotionally unshaken, maintaining your inner peace regardless of the chaos or negativity potentially swirling around you. This isn't about avoiding necessary confrontation or failing to address genuine problems. It's about discerning wisely what truly deserves your attention and emotional investment, and what is simply noise to be ignored. The next time you find yourself tempted to jump into an argument, to correct someone insistently, or to react defensively to a provocation, pause and ask yourself this critical question. If I engage fully in this, what positive outcome do I realistically expect to gain? More often than not, upon honest reflection, the answer will be nothing of lasting value. No enhanced peace, no genuine growth, no real progress, just wasted time, depleted energy, and potentially damaged relationships. However, when you consciously choose to let it go, to prioritize your peace, to walk away from the unproductive chaos, you win something far more valuable: mastery over yourself, control over your own emotional state. And when you possess that internal control, truly, nothing and no one can consistently bother you again. Conclusion: cultivating your unshakable core, becoming truly unshakable, developing the capacity to remain calm, confident, and unbothered amidst life's inevitable challenges and the opinions of others, is not about changing the external world, but about mastering your internal one. It begins with anchoring your self-worth firmly within, recognizing that you alone determine your value, independent of external validation or criticism. It involves breaking free from the addictive pursuit of approval, understanding that seeking validation from others places your emotional well-being in their unpredictable hands. It requires mastering the power of perspective, consciously choosing how you interpret situations and realizing that your interpretation, not the event itself, dictates your emotional response. It demands taking back control of your emotions, refusing to grant others the power to dictate your peace, and choosing thoughtful responses over knee-jerk reactions. It is built upon cultivating genuine inner confidence, rooted in self-knowledge and resilience rather than arrogance, making you impervious to attacks on your worth. It is shielded by the wise use of humor and indifference, deflecting negativity that doesn't deserve your energy. And it is sustained by the wisdom to choose your battles carefully, valuing inner peace far above the need to win every argument or correct every perceived wrong. By intentionally cultivating these principles, self-worth, freedom from approval, perspective, emotional control, confidence, indifference, and choosing peace, you build an unshakable inner core, becoming truly free to live authentically, purposefully, and peacefully, regardless of the storms around you. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to watch our next videos.